All right. So the recording has started. How's everybody doing?
Great.
It's been a whirlwind since we got together on Tuesday morning. And I'm really excited to show you the stuff that I've got for you today. I always do my best to make this as educational as possible, and just we're gonna keep it super formal. So if you have questions, I mean super informal. If you have questions at any point, just stop and ask me, because the best thing that we can do is just share as much knowledge as possible. I like to give a little bit of a recap of some of the stuff that I heard over the course of the day. Overwhelmingly positive. I was overwhelmingly impressed with the organization, the decisions that had been made, the thought that had gone into decisions. Typically, when I go in and I start to dig into a Main Street organization, there are quite a few tactics that I feel like I have to walk them back on and then try to redirect. And literally, everything that you are doing, you're doing spot on. From a design standpoint, from your committees, the things that the committees are working on. I didn't find anything that one committee was doing that a different committee should have been doing, which for some reason has been the trend lately, where every community has had committee confusion. So economic vitality was throwing events for some reason, just weird stuff. You guys had that, and you were doing it very well. There were a couple of things that we talked about on Tuesday that I wanted to provide some additional clarity on. One of which we talked about parking and the fact that every community has a parking problem. As I got to know the community a little bit better, there were a couple things that I wanted to point out. First of all, I think I made comments on Tuesday about the brick walls that were in the west parking lot, which I thought were interesting. Currently, your parking capacity and your parking needs are more or less in line. But you also have nearly 25% vacancy in your downtown. So, in short order, as the spaces that are vacant are no longer vacant, then it will change the dynamics of the accessible parking. There was a particular site that stuck out to me as being very interesting, and I wanted to talk about it real quickly. The connection from the municipal lot or the public lot on Wabash, the wooded lot, the grass lot, and the Methodist Church lot. And as you know, this property that we're looking at has a county line that runs through there, and that county line kind of dictates a dual parcel delineation on some of those properties. So a property might have a single owner, but it might already be subdivided because of the county boundary. So as you move forward, just know that this particular set of properties actually provides a pretty interesting opportunity for you to be able to partner together and possibly create a unified lot that really maximizes some of the space back there. You could have some sort of plaza type paving feature so that it's parking 85% of the time or 90% of the time, but then it's also event space for larger type events or things like that if you wanted to. Yeah.
So two, not to cut you off, I apologize.
No, it's fine.
Two comments. One is that there's a plan already to actually do that.
Perfect.
Give me your suggestion on the owner that actually owns the parcel in the middle who won't give up the property.
Okay.
So
Is there a reason?
the owner won't give it up?
Yeah.
Stubbornness.
They just don't want to sell it?
No, well, yeah, sell or give it. We have property owners that are willing to actually donate property to that for this particular reason.
Okay.
And then the other question I have for you is, the plans that were drawn up years ago to do this actually do involve some sort of plaza. However, doesn't that conflict with the Main Street focus of getting our focus back up onto Main Street and Wabash and Tolan, if we're putting a plaza behind?
It is not an over-programmed plaza. And this becomes a potential festival space of sorts that for events that never would have been appropriate to happen right in the core of downtown. So the issue in terms of connectivity is going to be a key issue no matter what. You got to make sure that you have pedestrian enhancements that connect it to Wabash and to Main so that the parking amenity is seen as being easily connected to that retail habit anyway. And do not over design it, do not over program it, and do not put too much into it. I mean, when I'm talking about plaza, I'm talking about pave that sucker and maybe paint the center a different color. Don't spend tens of thousands of dollars to brick pave it and all that kind of stuff.
No, that clarifies it because the plans actually call for like a farmer's market for the building.
Yeah,
Which there's no need for anymore.
exactly. Just
Some curb cuts that are like what has been put into the west parking lot that.
yeah, I think just now to go back to the stubbornness, the stubborn owner mentality. There is no turnkey solution to stubbornness, but I always tell folks that it's important to try to figure out where someone's motivations lie. To me, it is very rare that at the end of a day, a person literally is unwilling to do something simply because they enjoy standing in the middle of traffic and putting their hands up. That does happen.
I can introduce you.
Maybe if you talk to him.
Well, again, there are people that very much come off that way. But then, I mean, we had one family who they did not want to entertain conversation. They did not want to separate from property. They had no interest in being a part of the community. And the thing that was interesting was once someone came to them with the recommendation that, hey, we really want to do this, the community would benefit from doing this, and we would like to name the park after your family so that it becomes their legacy, it changed the way they thought about it. And I mean, have you all ever heard of DISC training? DISC personality training. It's like Myers-Briggs, but it's a little bit different. And one of the great things that DISC training does is they narrow down people into one of 4 personality types, and then they teach you how to sell to the different personality types, so that you always make sure that you make your pitch not for your personality type, but for their personality type. And sometimes that's part of our problem is we have the wrong person pitching or the wrong person talking, and they think that they need to hear this motivation when the person actually needs to hear a different motivation. Some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by the idea that this property has been in my family for 100 years, and I would be doing my ancestors wrong if I separated it. You got to figure out what that is. And then, if it is truly somebody who wants to stand in the middle of traffic, then it comes down to what we call the F&F rule of revitalization. Every community needs a couple fires and a couple funerals. So, we've never had a funeral happen on purpose. So that's the only good thing. We don't have any Main Street mercenaries out there. But that might be an interesting idea down the road.
Are you want us to quote you on that?
No, but unfortunately I did just record that. So, but again, that space, being able to do things in that space. Now, this particular space, because of the size, again, I wouldn't ever want to see permanent structures. One of the big problems with urban designers is they love drawing circles. So I gave a circle just so you all could have a circle, but it's all about temporary nature, not permanence. So if you started to be able to think about that space in a singular format, it could be the place where you could have some sort of temporary ice skating rink or temporary this or temporary that. But it needs to be parking first and foremost. And anytime you think about any design that disrupts the use of parking, then that should be kind of the trigger of maybe we're overthinking this, maybe we're doing too much. So I wanted to point that out simply because I saw that as a really good opportunity, having not reviewed any of the plans. So it's kind of cool to see that the thing that stuck out to me was something that had already been looked at and thought through. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is vacant buildings and vacant building treatments. We talked about this on Tuesday, so I wanted to share. There were a couple conversations about vacant buildings, but then there were also conversations about murals. Just so happens that in Lansing yesterday, I heard about an interesting new product that has come out that allows you to print on digital adhesive-backed material that can be directly applied to brick buildings and is a temporary mural that will give you about 6 to 10 years lifespan. So one of the biggest things that we always talk about with murals is once you paint a mural on the side of a building, you kind of become a jerk if you ever want to do infill where that is. So this might be an interesting solution. I literally just heard about it yesterday. I did not hear a product name. It's new to me, so I'll see if I can dig in and put some in the report just so you can have some more info. But one of the big things that we talked about was historic images, and this is an example of taking a historic postcard and just blowing it up. And literally, this is black and white print on bond paper, super cheap. You don't want to overthink vacancy treatments because the hope is that it's always going to be extremely temporary. If you're putting too much money or too much expense and time into it, it's like our goal is to have this be very, very temporary. The thing that this treatment does is it really blacks out those windows, so it brings all the action to the street side. Whenever you have multiple vacancies in a row, and I think we talked about this a little on Tuesday, you want to have a little bit of variation in the way that things are treated so it doesn't feel consistent. Because a vacancy treatment can work against you if it's the exact same treatment in multiple properties. It kind of amplifies the impact instead of breaking it up. So people expect to see that every single property is not filled. It's okay to have some that are empty. It's okay to have some things that go straight up on the window and then have some things that are a little farther back. Historic postcard images. These, again, this is one of the situations where I feel like they probably did too much because that's a lot of work for something that hopefully is only going to be up for a couple weeks or a couple months. This was an interesting example of a downtown building. It actually was not vacant, but it was filled with a business that dealt with medical data. And because of HIPAA, they weren't allowed to have transparent windows. So what we did there was we took a series of postcard images and did adhesives simply to create something that didn't look like a vacant building, but also we knew they weren't ever going to be able to look through the windows. And then one other thing that we did, and this is called the I Am Conway campaign, and it simply took stakeholders in the community, did little 11 by 17 posters where it talked about what they loved about the community. So it gave something small and for people to spend time kind of looking through and seeing. Something else that we talked about with the design committee was vibrancy grants. Vibrancy grants are really an adaptation or evolution of the facade grant, and they're an opportunity to take funds and give people the opportunity to go through and do things that bring life to the community. So, a couple of examples. I'm sure by now you've seen the umbrella ceilings on alleys and things. Those are super cool. Sometimes they just do color grants, anything that adds color. So the Adirondack chairs, public art. Down there, this artist took propane tanks and cut them and put them together and made like public drums, and each one had a little different noise. So like people constantly would stop and hit the drums and that kind of stuff. Something else that has become very, very big now is things that are adaptable. I brought up the comment in Toland Square about how the one table was bolted down. And Jill talked about how, it was a handicap accessible table, so it had to be bolted down. But all in all, you want things to be portable, adaptable, movable. And in fact, you want people to be able to move them. We had a county square in Shelby, North Carolina, where they put up all these little bistro chairs. And at the end of the day, the chairs, every day they were in a different place, in a different formation. They had been used in a different way. And that kind of adaptability really makes a space where people can live. Then also, let's see, this next one I really like. This is a cool treatment, bringing life out onto a sideway that people said was too narrow to do anything on. But they figured out how to mount those umbrellas off the wall and have two-person tables and still create, some energy and activity and compelling interaction.
Chelsea.
I don't know where that one is. Is it?
It's 20 miles.
Oh, okay. Waterloo picnic area.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then also just doing interesting art in public spaces. I'm sure you've probably seen creative crosswalks and people will have pedestrian crosswalks and then put a hopscotch in the middle of it, or have it look like piano keys or whatever. The little contact strips that you have to have for ADA on your crossing corners, turning those into welcome mats. Just fun things that help to interact people. So I feel like all your committees are doing good work, but those were things that came up in those discussions, so I wanted to share with you all because it didn't really have anything to do with why I'm here, but it's always good to share. The next thing that we saw was the community brand and the thing that the city has created and has been rolling out. And one of the things that we know is this identity is going to be making its way into the community. So as we enter into a branding process for the downtown and for the Main Street organization, we can pay attention to what the city's doing, or we could turn our back on it. But the fact is, the city's going to be investing in this. So the smartest thing for us to do is to wrap our arms around it and to embrace it and use it as the foundation for how we communicate. Because then that way we know that our organizational resources are going to align with the public resources that come out from the city. Plus, it makes it visually apparent that everyone plays together well. And that goes a long way. So that really served as kind of the foundation for the creation of this destination brand. When we develop a destination brand, there really are 4 primary components that make up that toolbox. One is an identified color palette, then uniform typefaces, a consistent message, and a consistent approach to graphics. and I'm going to share a PDF of this. So if I move too fast for your note taking, don't be too concerned. So the place that I wanted to start was with the color palette that the city was using. But if you remember back to what we talked about on Tuesday, I'm a big believer that in a community we should have a system that's very, very similar to how colleges and universities, they have an academic logo and an athletic logo. That city identity is that municipal government identity. I wanted to create a color palette that was complementary to that. But once we started to look at downtown, I wanted something that was far more vibrant, far more colorful, had far more action to it. So I wanted to use that same red as a base, but then I expanded that palette out to a 6-color palette that carried us with blues, yellow, orange to red. Now, again, I might be oversharing from a design standpoint, but I think one of the big things that you have to do when you want to have a broad color palette is you have to be very, very mindful that you don't have too many colors and it doesn't become a rainbow. So this gives us a variety of shades, but still keeps everything in this nice kind of contained color palette. And hopefully, if you look around downtown, you can actually see where those colors were derived. So what I did was I took colors downtown, and then I've got a program that generates the colors that appear most in the photo. And these colors are directly derived from the images of your downtown. So now all of a sudden what that means is when you use your brand, the colors that you use in marketing are going to be replicated when someone arrives in person. Does that make sense? Colors are pretty arbitrary decisions. So now, if nothing else, we now have a strategy as to why we picked what we did. So from there, once we identify the colors, we wanted to look at the word type. Now, the word type for the Milan City brand is a very, very bold selection. And I want to walk you through, and I'm going to do my best to project what I think the designers were thinking. And Jade, I know you were integral in that process. If at any point what I'm saying is not congruent, just correct me, because I literally am guessing. But the identified primary typeface in the style guide is this top typeface. It's a stencil typeface. And it's called, I don't remember what it's called, but they made a point in the style guide to say that it was customized. Now, the customization was that they made it not look like a stencil anymore. So let's walk down that road for a second. We select a typeface that looks like a stencil, and then we customize it so it doesn't look like a stencil, which now means moving forward, you as a community can't actually use that typeface anymore for connectivity because it always looks like a stencil. So you can't do anything other than Milan. Does that make sense? I'll show you where I'm going there. Because being able to have typefaces that you can use to say more words than just Milan is really important in brand extension. So if I wanted to type out crooked tree in that typeface, it's going to look like it's stenciled because that's the only tool that we have. So this top one is how it started. The middle one is the one that they adapted. So that's what you see on the signs that are out in downtown now. The one on the bottom is my adaptation of their adaptation. Can anybody tell what the difference is between the middle and the bottom?
It's a little more narrow.
Just a touch. Literally just a touch. Like so slight that I probably should never have even touched it. But I'm anal retentive, and I just felt like it's what needed to be done. So literally, it's hard to see here, but literally, the I and the L were simply too wide. and they needed to be shrunk just a little so that as you drove down the road and you saw that name, what you saw was Milan instead of what you saw was IL. And that's kind of what was happening.
So is what we're seeing there on the sides of the letters shadowing or the original size of the
You're
letter?
seeing the original size of the letters. Yep. So then what I did, and this is actually what blows my mind. This is where I was, like last night, I was like, oh wow, this is crazy. The typeface that you see on the top is the city's word type. The one on the bottom, right below it, is a typeface that I found called Largo. They look virtually identical. There's a little bit of difference in what's called horizontal scaling. So what I did was I went ahead and I bought Largo for Main Street so you can have that typeface. And now, all of a sudden, with the use and introduction of Largo, that typeface becomes part of your expansion system. Now, the second thing that I did was I selected a script typeface as a secondary for your system. And I chose to depart from the city's hand script because I wanted something that would be able to work in Main Street and really look the way that we were looking for. So we've got that continuity of some color and continuity of typeface, but then we also have our own elements. Does that make sense? Couple things that I heard in terms of values. Small town feel, energetic community with momentum. We're connected to one another, connected to the place, close-knit, and the realization and acknowledgement that we're not there yet. That's really important. That kind of fact that we're realistic. Acknowledging that you know you're not done goes a long way in trust with folks. So with all of that, I tried to kind of put that together, and I wrote a little narrative that I feel like helps capture the things that I heard you say and the things that I felt about the community. Welcome to downtown Milan. Nestled alongside Ford Lake, our downtown evokes all the best of small town life. Our locally owned businesses truly define customer service, while our vibrant events bring our home to life. We invite you to explore this amazing place, learn about our vision, and become part of our future. There are plenty of communities that are planning. In Milan, we are doing. You owe it to yourself to discover downtown Milan. It's happening. So when it all comes together, you see this concept of it's happening. It's happening has a duality of meaning, that we have plans that are actually being implemented, but also that there's activity here today. So it's that duality of kind of representation. I wanted to create something that was not literal for your graphic, because we knew that the city's logo was going to be very literal. I'm going to show you something for Main Street that's very literal. So from a downtown perspective, I wanted something that was a little bit more contemporary, that tied into being intertwined and connected and all kind of converging in a point. So with that, I start to dig into the overall system, and that is a dark blue. If I'll flip this around in a minute so you can see the colors, but the system, it allows you the opportunity to have horizontal versions, have vertical versions, stacked versions, one color. So you start to have these graphics that start to play. And that creates that foundation for telling your story. But then we also have to introduce that organizational identity. And with that organizational identity, what I did was I took the same word type, I took the graphic standard of the square with the reversed out image from the city. But here we created 4 different icons, 4 different colors, 4 different committees, 4-point approach. So again, you see that continuity of design, but then you also see the individuality of the graphics. So it features things like one of your vintage light poles. It features the one of the window ornamentations from the jewelry store. Is it jewelry store? Diamond, yeah. Which I think one of the things that we see over and over again is people are drawn to kind of the consistency of the windows in your downtown. You have really, really cool second floor windows. But you can start to see how those identities go together, but you have this downtown identity and this organizational identity. Now from there, you can take that same foundation of the colors, the typeface, and the approach to graphics and start to apply it to the events. So for example, Bloom, you can go in and you can tie those things in together, create something that helps to bring that event into that whole family. Summerfest, again, finding sensitive ways to reuse that word type, use that signature script. Third Thursday. Now, this next one, okay, so Crooked Tree Play Festival, which the Crooked Tree Play Festival's poster is great. And just that overall look, it's what I call the Chautauqua look. It's this kind of, it's a very vintage, very period look. But an event like that, oftentimes you're going to see significant change year over year in the way that the poster is going to look and the way that the graphics are represented, because it's an event that is inherently set in an artistic mindset. So one of the things I wanted to introduce was the idea of a simple consistency from a graphic identity for an event logo, so that you can have that consistency that goes through while still having that ability to truly change the look and feel, because it does need to be very versatile. Does that make sense?
So the icon can carry through from year
Absolutely.
to year.
Absolutely.
And still allow the flexibility of the theme of their particular.
Right. Right. So that icon and that logo might appear, down on that bottom corner, while you still have this very artistic Crooked Tree Play Festival that's, hand done or whatever you want to do, and give you that freedom to truly adapt.
We're looking at I think it was a Jester last year.
No, the one that I was looking at was the one, well, I don't know. Yeah. And yeah. And it had the guy leaning up against the crooked tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this next one's crazy. The Less Chill Winterfest, because everybody loves a holiday sweater.
I just gotta tell you though, the only issue is that it's in February, so it's after Christmas.
Oh, well, we can pull some of that stuff out. Yeah, we can take the trees out altogether.
We tricked
Yeah.
you on that.
And I mean, there's still trees in February, but no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. But you can see just kind of having. I mean, can you imagine if you made T-shirts that looked like ugly sweaters? Like, that would be hilarious. So, all in all, though, what you start to see is connectivity between those events. You start to see that people who are involved in the events can now take their experiences and not only have a good experience to the event, but contribute that good experience back into the downtown.
Can you turn it around so we can see the colors on the actual screen?
Yeah.
I think you got muted up there.
They're very muted up there.
Yeah, so I feel so much better when
Yeah.
I see that, yeah.
Yeah, very, very muted up there. So much brighter. And in fact, I mean, the vibrancy is one of the things that I really like about it. So, yeah, the screen will never do it justice. I wanted to go through and I wanted to design some collateral materials so that you could kind of see how it makes its way into the world. Things like business card. And again, this shows how you have this difference between kind of the Main Street side and then on the back side, you have the downtown identity because that's what you're the steward of. This is what we call the mullet theory of design. So you have the business in the front and the party in the back. You can take that and you can apply the mullet design theory to many things, but it really works for Main Street.
Yeah.
I can see that coming.
Yeah. So, being able to make products available to the community, and this is not, I mean, to me, this is the kind of thing you open up and you allow your businesses to profit off of this. And people want to over control and over regulate. And the fact is, 99.9% of the time, people are out there trying to do things well. I've done this in 500 communities across the country. I have one experience of a person who was intentionally malicious in their use of a logo, and they went and stole the logo in the first place. It was a community that did not allow people to use it. So all in all, we find that if you make it available, people will take it, they will use it in ways you never dreamed they would, and it will make it mean all the more. Doing simple things like making shopping bags available. One of the big things that we want to focus in on is rounding out our retail offerings and achieving a greater level of retail density in downtown Milan. So if we can see those vacant properties turn into available experiences for people to go and shop and take things away with them. I designed a brochure cover, and this can be really a combination because your community is a little smaller. This gives you an opportunity to have a kind of a business listing, a map, and an event guide all in one thing. Most of the time when I design these, I put a date really big on the front. I didn't for years just out of simple design aesthetic, but I will say, print this, it will be out of date, like the moment it is printed. So please don't try to realize economies of scale and print 4 years worth. Try to hone in on what an actual usable annual quantity would be and try to get on the point of being able to print these on a basis where you always know that you're going to be able to hit it. Now, what we've seen some communities do is some communities will actually design one that's much more generic in nature. It will describe the events but won't tell the dates that they happen, and it will just have a map of their downtown district, and then they will have an insert that has the actual up-to-date information so they can do a larger print run of the color shell, and then they can do annual additions to the insert. So there are a couple ways that you can set that up. I mean, if anybody downtown would like to serve beer and maybe have pint glasses that are customized. I heard some talk about a business toolkit. What I decided to do after thinking about it was I wanted to design a pocket folder cover so that the organization can have a very professional way for you to assemble together information. Might be a new business toolkit for one, might be a business recruitment for another. It might be information on upper floor housing for one. It might be, a kit on how to do an event in downtown for another. But I think that the versatility of a pocket folder would probably go a long way for you guys. And just so you know, production costs on these have dropped significantly. And you can get 250 custom printed folders for around $300, which is going to be about the same as if you went to Walmart and bought pocket folders. So this is very, very doable for programs. And again, don't over order and certainly don't put any date sensitive things in there. I designed a t-shirt for volunteers that kind of ties into the role that you play when you're a volunteer. It doesn't have to look like this, but I have a general rule of thumb when it comes to t-shirts, and it's do not make a car wash t-shirt. And we all know what those are. Those are the shirts that have 6,000 logos on the back, and they're so ugly that you only wear them when you're washing your car or cutting your grass. Make things that people want to wear. And like I even designed more of a product-oriented shirt, something that people might like to wear around. I designed banners so that you could see how different street banners might look throughout the district. One's an overall kind of downtown brand. I took and did a city variation because the city obviously is going to be interested in putting banners outside the district. So they're historic poles that go all the way out to the dairy bar.
Yeah.
So you've got this opportunity, and you can't expect that the downtown brand is going to make its way outside the downtown district. So having a certain continuity of design there goes a long way, and this is a good way to reinforce. And really, I wanted to do this as a way to kind of give the city permission to break that fire barn square away from their word type in the appropriate applications. Because sometimes when people go through branding, it's like they think the brand is the brand is the brand, and you're never allowed to change it, and you're never allowed to adapt it. But as a branding professional, this is completely okay. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then I showed this with the window. How cool would it be if you had a series kind of highlighting the different windows on the banners? So now all of a sudden the banners actually cause people to stop, look up, and take in the architecture of the buildings. I mean, it's kind of all connected in there. And then finally, I just designed a couple of ad layouts. I wanted you to see how the community could represent itself. So I designed this in a way where it'd be very modular and very easy for businesses in the community to take and run with. So you can see in that top bar, we have a headline. The headline gives us the opportunity to kind of adapt and change our message, but then it ties it into that "it's happening" tagline. We have a dominant photo, and I took that photo this morning. We have space for copy. That just happens to be the brand narrative. We've got the logo. We highlight the tagline again at the bottom. You can constantly change the way that headline works, change that dominant image. And then down the road, your businesses could adopt the same layout and could even simply change out their downtown. So the downtown Milan logo shrinks, goes over there right next to "it's happening," and then the business puts their logo in the primary spot. So the modular nature of the design gives you the ability to have the public sector and private sector work together to tell the community story. That's what I was able to do since yesterday. I'd love to hear your initial thoughts. And again, I apologize for the color reproduction because the richness in the system itself simply is not done justice on the screen. But I'd love to hear your initial thoughts, your reactions. Does the strategy make sense? Do you feel like these recommendations give you some good ground to kind of work from? And does it help to clarify how all the parts fit together?
What do you call that, again, the lower left-hand corner there, you called it the paragraph?
The brand statement.
Brand statement.
Yeah.
I was ready to move to Milan.
Awesome.
Boy, did you listen and really That's my impression.
Good.
But that you were really hearing what we were saying, even if we weren't saying it with the words. Captures spirit. That statement captures our spirit.
Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, you will notice there are little subtle nuances in that statement of things that there seemed to be a hesitancy in this community to connect itself to Ford Lake. And I mean, we heard the question as to whether or not Wilson Park is downtown. And I didn't say it on Tuesday, but I have this little rule in my own head where it's like downtown never stops at a park. Ever. There's never a park just on the other side of downtown. Downtown always owns that park. Like, there would be no reason for that ever to happen, for a park not to be downtown. And, you know, the lake, can we engage the water more? Can we make the water work to our advantage more? Sure. But you cannot drive up Wabash and say that there's not a lake in your downtown. And that was one of the most impactful things to me, and that is why I wanted to make sure that it was crystal clear that you got a lake in your downtown, and that's a pretty cool feature. And trying to kind of highlight on those things, it's interesting. I mean, you just have so many stories to tell. And I mean, even today, I had an opportunity to drive down and kind of look at some of the buildings over here that were affiliated with Ford and the things that were done in the community. It's just absolutely fascinating. And you all deserve for folks to take that time to dig a little deeper and explore what you have to offer. Other thoughts?
I love it's happening, that kind of, really, maybe a little misty-eyed when you said it, actually.
Well, good.
But I'm also excited to see how you were able to integrate the city brand with the.
Yeah, I think it works. All that's going through my mind is trying to sell council on another brand process that when we just completed one. My concern is if you want to go back to the banners, is taking the new. I'm trying to understand that because the way that the brand font is the same, the color's the same, but just that image of the bar. It was would it still look okay if it was the old bar?
I mean, it's the exact same barn.
No. I'm
It's
talking.
just a different
I
color.
took the contrast. It's presented differently there. I mean, the barn was more burgundy with the background being it was much more. It has a whole different appearance there than what I.
The only difference with that is that the sky is blue instead of white.
No, the barn is
Yeah,
red.
The barn is red in the other one, but with white accents.
No, because it's in the red box.
Yeah.
Go, if you went back, you'd see.
The first slide?
Not to say I don't like it. I'm just trying to figure out how to answer this.
Oh, I mean, I can fix if I pulled it out
See,
wrong.
There it was.
The
There
barn
it
is
was.
red. The barn is.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, I can switch that out. That's not a big deal at all.
But you know what's interesting now that you went back there? I thought it was a total different depiction of the barn in your presentation.
I did too.
I actually like yours better.
I do too.
That ship has sailed.
Yeah, no, it is literally, and that's why I was confused, because literally I was using the city graphic,
Okay.
but no, I completely understand, and that's one of those things. That's an easy thing to do. I wanted to make sure. Yeah, I can fix that.
Okay.
Not a big deal.
But it was
Not a big
seeing
deal.
it in white and seeing it in red really changed
The
like,
feel.
The feel.
But the barn itself
I
is
went
red.
from like that's not a firehouse, it's a schoolhouse.
Yeah.
Like that was in my mind. That's what I.
Yeah,
So,
makes sense.
So I love this little, wait, go back
Okay,
there.
yep.
I love the little, at the bottom, it's happening with
Yeah.
the rendering of all the buildings
Yep.
down there.
And I did a bunch of that stuff for you just so you would have additional art. I did I've got one file that just has the 3 windows of the diamond setters that I've done in vector art, so you can take it and grow it and do all kinds of things with it. Just because I feel like that's kind of the cleanliness of one thing with the texture and color of the other, it gives you that opportunity to kind of land in something that's a little dynamic. Yes, ma'am.
And I love these colors because Chelsea, Dexter, they all have the dark purple and green, so we're gonna be different. We're not gonna be the dark purple and green.
Can you turn this one around too? So I
Yes,
can see that?
absolutely.
So this would give us a totally different look than everybody else has gone with the purple and green.
Is it worthwhile for us to, obviously you were I still think there's value for us to keep the connectivity of where we came from and where we're going somehow in this narrative to be able to keep that, because we've got strong farming families here that are still farming thousands of acres
Right.
right here within a time.
So there are a couple. Okay, so first of all, let me answer that 3 different ways.
Must have asked a good question.
The brand statement is absolutely intended to be a living document. It's intended to be adaptable. It's intended for you to be able to add things to it, subtract things from it. I didn't write a particularly long one here because with it focused just on downtown, I felt like I wanted to err on the side of brevity. But you can absolutely add as much content as you want to be able to hit on those things. There are a couple things that I did not hit on that I still think are unbelievably intriguing. I just didn't want it to go too long. The Ford history is one. Probably my favorite story about Milan is the fact that Milan started as Farmersville. Then you got a new postmaster who called it Woodward Mills, because his name was Woodward. And then you had another postmaster who changed it to Tolanville because he was Tolan. Like, I've never been in a place that people just kept renaming the communities after themselves every time that they were made postmaster. And like literally at one point, you were simultaneously known as 4 different names for the same place. And to me, that's a really great story. And I think those are the kind of things that you want to be able to tell, because it really is part of who you are and part of that dynamic. But absolutely, I would urge you all, if there are major elements that you'd like to see added and you want me to take a stab at adding them, just, send that stuff through Jill and I'll kind of craft that and weave it in the way that I think makes sense. And then moving forward, feel free to take it and really do whatever you want to with it, because it can be a springboard to truly tell that story. You might decide you want to write a whole paragraph just on the events that you do, things like that.
It's interesting too, because we have 3 railroads that cross here too. So, Moorville was bigger than we were to begin with, and now it's just one little store, but actually the railroads, and there were lots of hotels because people would, I think we had 4 or 5 hotels.
That's before the sleep in.
Huh?
And that's before the sleep in.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's got a lot of history, yeah.
So absolutely, thanks for changing the font.
Yes.
Sure.
That slight twist, the morning I woke, we just went through that.
Mhm.
We had a custom font that we were custom rebuilding every single time we wanted to change a letter or add something, and it was a pain. And then I found a font that was this much different, and all of a sudden we fired out brochures instantly with 0 effort. So that was really cool. So A+. The color design, I like that it's artistic, speaks for our community. I like that it's bright colors, which speaks to, like kid-friendly, kind of like welcoming. My other side of it is, I can't imagine trying to print 5 colors on a t-shirt or 5 colors on mugs and then be able to retail them well. thinking like.
I
when
don't
pay
know,
an
you
extra
know,
dollar
so
for
much of
color-
that production now has gone to
$1
dye
a color
sub or
For a t-shirt, you get a base
Are
shirt
you
and you
working with, Josh? Did you
Yes.
see what he did with that?
did he give you guys a good price on them?
Yeah.
Because when I talked to him for these, every additional color was like about an extra $1.50 per shirt.
You're gonna have to mother him up.
well, and the other thing,
Yeah, shoot.
yeah, the other thing that you have to remember too. I mean, screen print is one thing.
Okay.
Where your overall, anytime that you have a process, you can go through a process production, which for the most part has become standard on any printing. It used to be that we would attempt to keep a brand identity to two colors because people were sending things to the press and it was, you literally got charged extra for every single thing. So many people are producing things in color, and so many of these production houses are essentially leaving a full process so that you can get 4 color for the same price you can get 1 color.
Thank you so
Depends
much.
on that vendor. Thank you so much. But I do think that I wanted to make sure that I had a 1 color build of those as well. So you can run this in black and white. I've got 50% screens on the intertwined elements.
Oh, okay.
So that, all those along the bottom are literally 1 color impressions. And in a screen print, it'll half tone down into a dot so they'll be able to run that as a 1 color if that's where you decide to go with it. And I can create like a 2 color version as well, just so you have it in your toolbox.
Our events are all, most of our events are in the next 4 months. And marketing decisions are being made about, we've got a meeting. Work on the marketing plan for the Play Festival. Are these things that we can put to use right away, or should we be putting them to
I
use?
think we need to have the board, yeah.
We have to adopt this as a board, as far as the board. This,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I cut you off, but I do have a question about some of the logos on the events. And if, how you would adapt those, because for instance, the balloon one. Okay, maybe you want to sneeze.
Listening.
I thought it looked like dandelions that you were gonna like blow, maybe that's.
Yeah, we can.
And it's in the spring, so it's like, I don't know.
But actually, if we take that and take what we had for balloon.
I tweak the heads.
The types of flowers, right?
Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
blue
Because it kind of
2018 down.
settled with the flowers that we did, she did on the shirts and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That kind of would blend right in with that.
So we'll have the ability to change that. I mean, we're gonna get a color palette and a style guide for this as well.
Yeah.
Similar to what, okay.
And stuff like that, if you send that my way before I get it wrapped up, I can switch that stuff out. Everything that you see is all going to be vector art. It's going to be easy for somebody to take and adapt and run with. But any of those tweaks that you can see very clearly as being something you want to do, I mean, for me to change those out and go to more traditional petaled flowers, I can easily do that in a couple minutes.
Can you flip to the Crooked Tree one?
Yeah. I've got the logo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I've got the logo.
I would certainly tilt towards this one as opposed to that. The one thing I would say about that one is that I wonder if we could make the tree a little.
Yeah.
I don't know if that matters, but we have a file of that.
Is that different from the Historical Society one?
No, that is the one.
That is the historical, yeah. So I drew that one. I can easily,
Because it's the opposite up there.
I drew that one from the photo.
Okay.
So I took the photo at the gas station and then I drew the tree from the photo. I can do whatever we need to do to spread out the branches. And in relationship to the thing on the right hand side, this is by no means, in my mind, this is not intended a either or. This is intended as you being able to start having a set of tools so you can tell the story, so that, you know, the idea of a play festival and the crooked tree that we're trying to remember can kind of coexist. Maybe it's social media. No, it's just a graphic. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to describe what it's for exactly. It's almost like, you know, a hockey team has a team logo and then they have a random thing that goes on the shoulder. You know, it's like. Yeah. So just think about having things that you know, everything doesn't have to be multi-logo. Be, you know, and they're again, these are really springboard for design, springboard for conversation. So any of those adaptations and changes, I think, are easy things to do. But just see where the conversation goes. What I like to do is I like to give you guys a couple of weeks to review the recommendations, pull together refinements that you'd like to see. Then Jill will give that to me. I'll go through and make the refinements and then finalize the package.
Overall, I think that it's great. I do think it complements the word connect was the big word when they went through when we went through the branding process. Progress and that was the word that so that and then all of this does kind of connect back
Absolutely.
to the overall and the color scheme.
Good.
Because I think the cities is a very much one.
Good.
I walked in a couple minutes late, so you may have already covered that. Did you have any? Don't call it an MV. Keep going back to, there you go. Any one of these, the square above down.
Yeah. It's kind of it's a stylized, I mean, to me, I was designing it as a stylized M, but also the four components and this kind of intertwining, this like, you know, woven together of sorts, just kind of the nature of the community. But I wanted something that stylistically kind of felt like the components of an M, but then also still fit into a square shape, because so much of all of the systems in play had a square that were part of them from an identity standpoint. But just wanted something that was abstract and you know, interconnected.
Well, I knew you would have had a reason for what you did.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to hear the story.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing I think is happening, because it's not probably, it's probably darker on your screen.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can hardly see it.
Yeah.
But that makes it really great.
So where does this come in relation to the Michigan Main Street logo?
Laura, jump in if I say this wrong. I mean, I think that from an identity standpoint, that Michigan Main Street very much is a crutch for an organization to lean on until they are able to create that identity for themselves. I think that so a perfect example is as you drive into the community now, you're greeted by those signs that welcome you into the downtown, and they've got that Michigan Main Street logo. Now, Laura, you did not change graphic identities as you moved from MISTA to MEDC. So I would say,
Been like that for 14 years.
yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it had been pretty consistent. You're not going to take those signs down, but you also don't need to incorporate it in your What it now symbolizes, it now reverts back to the Michigan Main Street logo, and you would use it anytime you have a circumstance that you are affiliating with the state program. So if there's a program brochure that you put out, you're probably going to say, you know, a community, a part of the Michigan Main Street program, and then feature that logo. But
And using the Michigan Main Street one now, not the Milan Main Street version.
right, right. So I would say with the adoption of this, you now would formally retire the Milan Main Street variation of the Michigan Main Street logo. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think like anytime like this, you know, you do flyers up to get people to come out to any types of training. Other programming that we may do here, you know, you could say brought to you by Michigan Main Street, you know. The whole brand and saying, okay, this are still part of the state program, which is the
Yeah, there are any number of different variations as well. I mean, I've seen some communities that, like, let's say the downtown logo. There could be a situation where you had a downtown Milan logo, and then underneath it, it said a Michigan Main Street community. That doesn't, like, that would not be your primary use. That would not be the thing that you want to say all the time, but it's a variation that you might have. Just like right here where it says downtown Milan, it's happening. You could absolutely have one that says downtown Milan, Michigan. It's designed in a modular format so you can easily change those things out, and that kind of change does not dilute your branding. I think a lot of times people feel like creating variations dilutes your branding. Not at all. This is about, it's like if you have a stage, you're not any less of a theater just because there's a different play that's performed there. And being able to say the right thing at the right time is what having a good versatile brand is about. Any other thoughts? Anything else I need to hear before I head out? All right, let me tell you real quickly, and then we'll wrap up. But so we're gonna go a couple weeks. I'm gonna upload this video tonight from the airport, and also convert this into a PDF and share that with Jill. She'll circulate that through the board. We'll give ourselves a couple weeks for you to dig in, pass on refinements and things like that, and then that will come back over to me. Hopefully, that'll probably be right about the beginning of July, if my timing is right. And I will be able to take those revisions and then turn it around, hopefully in less than 2 weeks from when I get it. And I will deliver back to you all a style guide document. The style guide will define how to use it, how not to use it, tell what all the colors are, what the typefaces are. It'll also, I will give you every single logo that I've designed. I'll save them out in 1 color, 2 color, black and white, all that stuff. And then each one I'll save in 5 different file formats. So you literally will have every tool that you need. I've already purchased the typefaces in your name, so you have 5 licenses for the typefaces for Milan Main Street. And I will provide you a digital link that gives you access to all of the assets. All the photography that I took is yours. You know, all the design files and everything, I literally will give you access to all that stuff. And it is yours to take and run with. Feel free to adapt things, tweak things, change things. Like it's yours. Like you do not have to ask permission, and like you can do what you need to do to make it work for you. But I mean, all in all, and based off the feedback, I think that this is the case. I hope that you feel like I got pretty close in terms of being able to tell the story and be able to provide a system that works for this community. Because that's the thing. If the tools are not what you need, they're not going to get used. Good. Awesome. Awesome. All right, well, thank you all so much. Thanks for all the meetings that you all sat through.
Thank you.